Emma hurried up the stairs of the apartment building, shaking off the cold drizzle that clung to her jacket. It had been a long day at work, one of those endless meetings that left her drained. Usually, she came home late, long after her brother Daniel was asleep or lost in his own world of books and music. But tonight, the rain had canceled her plans, and she reached their door earlier than expected. She unlocked it quietly, stepping inside with the familiar smell of coffee and old wood filling the air. The living room was empty, dimly lit by the soft glow of a lamp. She slipped off her shoes and set down her bag, the silence pressing around her. As she moved down the hallway toward her room, she noticed something unusual. Daniel's bedroom door was slightly open, a faint sliver of light spilling into the hall. He almost never left it open. He was private, guarded, someone who kept his world behind closed doors. She slowed her steps, telling herself to keep walking, but curiosity made her pause. She leaned closer, just enough to peek through the gap. The sight froze her. Daniel was sitting on the edge of his bed, his shoulders bent forward, a framed photograph resting in his hands. His expression wasn't the calm, collected one she knew so well. His eyes glistened, his jaw tense, his fingers trembling slightly as if the picture carried the weight of years. Emma's breath caught. She had seen Daniel serious, thoughtful, even angry, but never this. Never broken. Her first instinct was to retreat, to give him the privacy he clearly needed. But something kept her rooted there, watching her heart aching in her chest. There was a depth in his sadness that pulled at her, a story she had never been told. He lifted the photo closer, and for a moment she caught the faint outline of a woman's face reflected in the glass. A woman she didn't recognize. Emma's chest tightened. Who was she? Why did Daniel look at her picture with such sorrow, as though the world had slipped out from under him? A part of Emma wanted to walk in, to place a hand on his shoulder, to tell him he wasn't alone. But she hesitated, afraid to break the fragile moment. He looked so lost, and she didn't know if her presence would comfort him or shatter him further. Her brother had always been her rock. Growing up, he was the one who walked her to school, who stood up for her when kids teased her, who reminded her she was stronger than she believed. Even now, living together in the city, he was the steady heartbeat of her days. Daniel was dependable, reserved, but always there. And to see him unravel in silence, holding onto a piece of his past so tightly, stirred something she couldn't explain. Emma shifted back, leaning against the wall, trying to catch her breath. She felt like she had crossed an invisible line, seen something not meant for her eyes. Yet the image was carved into her mind. Daniel's shoulders trembling, his eyes wet, his lips moving faintly as if whispering words to the photograph. She couldn't hear them, but she felt the weight of them all the same. The hallway light flickered, and she flinched, realizing how long she had been standing there. Carefully, she stepped away from the door, forcing herself to move toward her own room. Her heart raced, her thoughts tangled. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to push the memory aside. But it clung to her, sharp and unrelenting. Why had he never told her about the woman in the photo? Why did his pain feel so deep, so raw, as if he carried it every single day? And why, when she saw him like that, did her heart respond with something more than sympathy? She hated herself for the thought, but she couldn't deny it. There was a pull, a tenderness in her chest that didn't feel like sisterly concern. Emma turned over, clutching her pillow. She told herself it was just the shock of the moment, the intimacy of seeing someone so strong fall apart. But even as she tried to reason with herself, her pulse betrayed her. It was as if she had glimpsed a side of Daniel no one else knew existed. And now she couldn't forget it. Sleep didn't come easily that night. She listened to the rain against the window, the faint creaks of the apartment, and the sound of her own restless breathing. She thought of Daniel alone in his room, holding that picture, his eyes shadowed with memories. She wondered if he cried himself to sleep. She wondered if he ever truly let anyone see him as he was in that moment. The next morning, she moved through the motions of getting ready, her mind still circling the night before. She saw him in the kitchen, pouring coffee, his expression calm again, his mask firmly in place. But now she knew what lay beneath it. She caught herself staring at him too long, noticing the faint tiredness around his eyes, the way he avoided meeting hers. He knew she had seen something. She could feel it. Emma opened her mouth to ask, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she forced a smile, took her mug, and sat across from him. He gave her a brief glance, then looked away, focusing on his drink. The silence between them was heavier than it had ever been as the day stretched on. Emma couldn't shake the image of Daniel by the window. She couldn't shake the question of who the woman was and why she held such power over him. But most of all, she couldn't shake the dangerous warmth in her chest whenever she thought of him, how vulnerable he had looked, how much she wanted to reach out and hold him. It scared her, that feeling. It was wrong, it was confusing, but it was real. And deep down, she knew she couldn't ignore it forever. For now, though, she kept her secret, just as Daniel kept his. But the distance between them had shifted. Something had changed, and no matter how much she tried to pretend otherwise, Emma knew that one accidental glimpse into her brother's heart had opened a door that could never be closed again. The next morning, Emma woke to the smell of coffee drifting through the apartment. For a moment, she lay still, staring at the ceiling, replaying the memory of last night in her mind. The image of Daniel sitting alone with that photograph burned inside her, stirring questions she didn't want to ask but couldn't ignore. She finally pushed herself out of bed, slipped into a sweater, and made her way to the kitchen. Daniel stood by the counter, dressed neatly in his usual button-down shirt, his hair slightly damp from a morning shower. To anyone else, he looked the same as always, calm, composed, steady. But Emma knew better now. She could see the faint heaviness in his eyes, the tired curve of his mouth. "Morning," she said softly, forcing a casual tone. "Morning," he replied without looking at her, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. His voice was even, but there was something restrained about it, like he was hiding behind the words. She sat at the table, watching him move with practiced ease. He set a mug in front of her, then leaned against the counter with his own. He didn't sit across from her like usual. That small change felt louder than any words. Emma sipped the coffee, her mind racing. She wanted to ask about the photo, about the sadness she had seen, but her throat tightened. What if he shut her out? What if he grew angry that she had seen something private? Instead, she said lightly, "You look tired." Daniel gave a short laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Long night," he muttered. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tapping of rain against the window. Emma fidgeted with her mug, her heart aching at the distance he was building. She wanted to cross it, to remind him he wasn't alone. But he seemed determined to keep her away. The rest of the day moved slowly. Emma went to work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Daniel. She pictured him sitting at his desk in his office, focused on spreadsheets or meetings, pretending everything was fine. She wondered if he kept that photograph hidden in his drawer, if he stole glances at it when no one was watching. By evening, her curiosity had grown unbearable. She couldn't stand the thought of him carrying that weight in silence. When she got home, she hesitated outside his door again. The light was on, and she could hear faint music playing soft, slow. It's the kind of music that came from someone's soul rather than the radio. She took a deep breath and knocked gently. "Daniel." She called. There was a pause. Then his voice, low and guarded. "Yeah, can I come in?" Another pause. The music stopped. Then, "Sure." Emma pushed the door open and stepped inside. His room was tidy, almost too tidy, as if he had cleaned it just to distract himself. He was sitting on the edge of his bed again, his shoulders tense, but the photograph was gone. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read, part surprise, part hesitation, part something softer. "You okay?" she asked quietly, standing by. "Why the door?" "I'm fine," he said quickly, too quickly. She frowned. "You don't look fine," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. For a moment, he looked away, staring at the floor. "There are things you don't know about me, Emma. Things I've kept to myself." Her chest tightened. "Then maybe it's time to share them. You don't have to carry everything alone." His eyes flicked back to hers, sharp but vulnerable. And if I don't want you to see that part of me?" Her breath caught. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You already showed me, Daniel. Last night. I didn't mean to, but I saw you. I saw how much you're hurting." He froze, his face tightening as if she had struck a nerve. For a moment, she thought he might yell, "Push her out, shut the door between them." But then his shoulders slumped, and a quiet sadness spread across his features. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said softly. Emma sat beside him on the bed, careful not to get too close. "Maybe I was," she replied. "Maybe you needed someone to see it." The room grew quiet. He stared at his hands, his fingers laced tightly together. While she studied his profile, the strong lines of his jaw, the weariness in his eyes, the way his silence spoke louder than words. "Her name was Sarah," he finally said, his voice breaking the stillness. "She was everything to me. And then one day, she was gone." Emma's heart sank. She waited, giving him space to continue. "She left without warning," he said bitterly. "No explanation. No closure. Just silence. And he cut himself off, shaking his head. I've never been the same since." Emma swallowed hard, her chest aching for him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He glanced at her, and for the first time that night, his eyes softened. "I don't want your pity, Emma." "It's not pity," she said quickly. It's care. It's me not wanting you to go through this alone." Their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between them, something heavier than grief, something more dangerous than comfort. Emma felt her pulse quicken, her body betraying her with a warmth she couldn't explain. She forced herself to look away, to breathe, to remember he was her brother. But the air between them was charged now, thick with everything they weren't saying. Daniel leaned back, his voice quieter. "You shouldn't have to deal with my mess. I've spent years trying to bury it. I don't want it to affect you." Emma turned to him, her voice trembling. "It already does. Because I care about you more than you realize." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Her heart pounded in her chest, her mind screaming at her to pull back. But it was too late. The truth was out, hanging in the air between them. Daniel's eyes widened slightly, his lips parting as if to speak. But he didn't. He just stared at her, searching her face. As though trying to understand the weight of her confession, Emma rose quickly, her cheeks burning. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Forget I did." She turned and hurried toward the door, her chest tight, her breath shallow. Behind her, Daniel's voice called her name, low and urgent, but she didn't stop. She slipped out into the hallway, pressing her back against the closed door, her hands shaking. Her secret was out now, and she knew nothing between them would ever feel the same again. Emma avoided Daniel for the next 2 days. She left early for work, came home late, and when they crossed paths, she kept conversations short. It wasn't anger that drove her distance, it was fear. Fear of what she had confessed, fear of how he might have understood it. Fear of facing feelings she had never meant to speak aloud. But no matter how hard she tried to bury them, the feelings stayed. Every time she saw him pass by the hallway or heard the sound of his voice on the phone, her heart clenched. She couldn't undo what she had said. On the third evening, Daniel finally confronted her. She walked into the apartment after work and found him waiting in the living room. His posture was tense, his arms crossed. His gaze fixed on her the moment she closed the door. "We need to talk," he said firmly. Emma's throat went dry. She set her bag down slowly, trying to steady her breathing. "About what?" she asked, though she already knew. "About the other night," he replied. "About what you said." She hesitated, searching for an escape. But there was none. So she nodded and followed him to the couch. They sat on opposite ends, the silence between them as heavy as stone. Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Emma, I need to know what you meant. Did you really mean what you said? Or was it just a slip? Something said in the heat of the moment?" Emma stared at her hands, twisting them in her lap. Her heart screamed at her to deny it, to laugh it off, to say it was nothing. But she couldn't lie, not when the truth had already slipped out. She lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes. "I meant it," she whispered, His expression flickered, surprise, confusion, something unsteady. He sat back slowly, exhaling like the weight of her words pressed down on him. Emma, you can't say things like that. Do you understand what it does? She bit her lip, holding back tears. I know it's wrong. I know I shouldn't feel this way. But I do. And I can't just turn it off. For a long moment, he said nothing. The clock ticked on the wall, each second louder than the last. Finally, he shook his head. You don't understand. I've already been broken once. With Sarah, I gave everything, and it destroyed me. I can't go through that again, especially not with you. Emma's chest tightened. So you're saying you don't feel anything at all? His jaw tightened, his eyes darkening. That's not what I'm saying. Her heart skipped. Then what are you saying? Daniel stood abruptly, pacing the room like a man trapped in his own thoughts. I'm saying it's complicated. Too complicated. And if we let this go any further, we could ruin everything, our family. Our trust, our lives. Emma rose too, her voice trembling but strong. Maybe? Or maybe we're just scared. Maybe the truth is simpler than we think, and we're the ones making it complicated. He stopped and turned toward her. His eyes locked on hers with an intensity that stole her breath. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking you to be honest with me, she whispered. Do you feel it too? The air between them seemed to thicken, heavy with tension. Daniel's hands clenched at his sides, his chest rising and falling faster. For a moment, Emma thought he might deny it, push her away again. But then his voice came quiet and raw. Yes, he said. I feel it. More than I should. Her heart pounded, her knees weak. She stepped closer, unable to stop herself. Then why keep running from it? Because it's dangerous, he said sharply. Because once we cross that line, we can't go back. And if it ends badly, if we break, we'll destroy more than just us. Tears stung Emma's eyes. Daniel, I'm already broken. Every time I try to fight it, it tears me apart. Pretending doesn't protect me. It hurts me. For a long moment, neither moved. The only sound was the rain outside. The soft patter against the window, like a rhythm to their silence. Finally, Daniel ran a hand over his face, his voice cracking. You don't know how much I've tried to stop myself. From the moment you walked in that night, when you saw me with that picture. I hated myself for even thinking it. For even wanting you to be the one to comfort me. Emma's tears fell freely now, but she didn't step back. She moved closer, close enough to feel the heat of him, close enough to see the war in his eyes. You don't have to fight it alone anymore, for a heartbeat. Their faces hovered inches apart, the air alive with longing, fear, and everything unspoken. But then Daniel turned away suddenly, retreating a few steps like he had touched fire. No, he said, his voice rough. Not like this. Not now. I can't. You deserve more than a man who can't trust his own heart. Emma's hands trembled at her sides. And what if the only heart I want is yours? Daniel closed his eyes, his body tense with conflict. When he opened them again, his gaze was pained but firm. Then you'll have to wait, because right now I can't give it to you. Not when I'm still holding on to the past. The words cut deep, sharper than she expected. But beneath the hurt, Emma saw the truth. He wasn't rejecting her out of indifference. He was rejecting her out of fear. She swallowed hard, wiping at her cheeks. Then heal, Daniel. Do whatever you have to do. But don't ask me to stop feeling, because I can't. With that, she turned and left the living room, retreating to her room before he could answer. She closed the door behind her, sliding down against it, her whole body shaking. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable, so terrified of what the future held. But she also knew one thing with certainty. Daniel felt it too. He admitted it. And that truth was both the most beautiful and the most dangerous thing she had ever heard. She lay awake long into the night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of Daniel moving around in the other room. She wondered if he was thinking of her, if his chest ached the way hers did, if he lay awake asking the same question, what happens now? The answer didn't come. Only silence, only rain. only the steady rhythm of two hearts caught in a storm they couldn't escape. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Emma and Daniel moved around the apartment like shadows, careful not to cross paths for too long. They exchanged polite words. "Did you eat?" Or "I'll be late tonight, but nothing more." The real conversations, the ones waiting in their hearts, stayed locked away. Emma carried the weight of his confession with her everywhere. The memory of his voice, "Yes, I feel it," more than I should go to again and again. It gave her hope, but it also broke her, because hope without action felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down but never jumping. One evening the rain returned, falling in sheets against the windows. Emma sat on the couch, curled up with a blanket, trying to lose herself in a book. But the words blurred on the page. Her mind kept drifting, restless, unsettled. She thought of Daniel in his room, likely pacing, fighting battles she couldn't see. The sound of footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. Daniel walked into the living room, his expression unreadable. He stood there for a moment, as if deciding whether to turn back. Then, slowly, he sat down across from her. "We can't keep pretending," he said finally, his voice low but steady. Emma's heart raced. She closed the book, her fingers trembling. Pretending what? That nothing happened. That nothing was said. That we don't feel what we feel. His eyes locked on hers, intense and unflinching. "It's tearing us apart." She swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped tightly together. "We face it. We stop running, even if it scares us." Emma's breath caught. She wanted to believe him, but doubt pressed heavy in her chest. "And then what, Daniel? What happens after we face it? Do we just live with it in silence? Or do we risk everything?" The room grew quiet, the rain filling the space between them. Daniel stared at the floor, then back at her. His voice softened. "I don't have the answers. All I know is that I can't keep lying to myself. Not when you're right here." Emma's chest ached. She rose slowly, crossing the small space until she stood in front of him. Her hands shook as she reached out, touching his shoulder gently. "You don't have to lie. Not to me." He looked up at her, his eyes searching hers, full of fear and longing all at once. For a heartbeat, time seemed to hold its breath. And then he stood so close now she could feel his warmth, his presence overwhelming. "Emma," his voice broke. "If we do this, if we even let ourselves feel this way, there's no going back. We can't erase it." Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "Maybe we're not supposed to erase it. For a moment." He looked as if he might step back, retreat into the safety of silence again. But instead, he stayed. The storm outside raged, and inside, another storm broke free. Their eyes held, unspoken truths, crashing louder than words. Then Daniel whispered, almost to himself, "You've been the one constant in my life. The one person I never wanted to hurt." Emma's throat tightened. "And you've been the one I could never stop caring for." Even when I tried, the weight of their confessions filled the room, fragile and dangerous. Daniel turned away, pacing again, his hands running through his hair. "It shouldn't be like this. We should walk away, end this before it consumes us." "But it already has," Emma said, her voice trembling but firm. "It's already here, Daniel. Denying it doesn't make it disappear. It just hurts more." He stopped, his back to her, his shoulders rising and falling with heavy breaths. Then slowly he turned, his face etched with conflict. "I don't know how to be what you need. I'm still haunted by Sarah. I'm still broken.